Late last week, in the midst of the social and cultural madness that surrounds the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States, the Vatican announced the American bishops who would be involved in designing policies and procedures for protecting minors and seminarians. The timing was odd because most people missed the news in that week because many are traveling and others are too busy preparing for family festivities. I personally saw my view count go down on this channel that week because, frankly, many people like to avoid negative news in the holiday season, which is why it's all the more curious as to why the Vatican chose that week in particular to let the faithful in America know that we are all in good hands, that the Vatican has this problem under control, and that we, the lay faithful, have nothing to worry about. It almost looks like they didn't want most of us to know about this story, which is absurd, right? Let's take a look at the who's who of who was appointed by the Vatican to delve into this abuse crisis. It's going to definitely be the cream of the crop of the bishops, the very best, the most moral, and the most quick on their feet. It certainly won't be any of the controversial figures with ties to McCarrick and past accusations against them, right? The National Catholic Register. Cardinal Cupich, Gracias, appointed to committee for February abuse meeting. Archbishop Charles Scicluna and Jesuit Father Hans Zollner are the other named to be the organization committee, while two women, abuse victims, and members of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors will help with the preparatory work. Cardinal Blaise Cupich of Chicago and Archbishop Charles Scicluna of Malta are among those Pope Francis appointed today to the organizing committee for next February's meeting of President's Bishops' Conference to discuss the protection of minors in the Church. In a statement released on Friday, the Vatican said they will be joined by Cardinal Oswald Gracias of Bombay, India, and Jesuit Father Hans Zollner, president of the Center for the Protection of Minors at the Pontifical Gregorian University. Father Zollner, who is also a member of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, will be the contact person for the committee, the Vatican said. In September, Pope Francis called for the special February 21st to 24th meeting, whose official theme is the protection of minors and vulnerable adults, following a raft of revelations of historical clerical abuse cases in various parts of the world. The Vatican also announced on Friday that, as well as the conference presidents, those taking part in the meeting will include the heads of the Eastern Rite Catholic churches, superiors from the Secretariat of State, heads of various curial dicasteries, the Congregation for the Doctrines of the Faith, Oriental churches, bishops, the evangelizations of peoples, clergy, institutes of consecrated life, and for the societies of apostolic life, and the dicastery of the laity, the family, and life, as well as representatives of the Union of the Superiors General and of the International Union of Superiors General. The preparatory work for the meeting will involve the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, along with some victims of clerical sex abuse, as well as two women, Gabriel Gambino, Undersecretary for the Section for Life, and Linda Ghisoni, Undersecretary for the Section for the Lay Faithful, of the Dicastery for the Laity, Family, and Life. In comments to the media, Holy See Press Office Director Greg Burke said the meeting is unprecedented and shows the Pope has made the protection of minors a fundamental priority for the Church. Note the protection of minors being the emphasis here. This is about keeping children safe from the harm worldwide, Pope Burke said. Pope Francis wants church leaders to have a full understanding of the devastating impact that clerical sexual abuse has on victims. Again, focusing on the children. We'll get to that in a minute. He added that the meeting is primarily one for bishops, and they have much of the responsibility for this grave problem, but that lay men and women who are experts in the field of abuse will give their input and can help address especially what needs to be done to ensure transparency and accountability. Archbishop Scicluna is included among the members because of his long experience of conducting investigations into sexual abuse by clergy on behalf of the Holy See. Pope Francis recently appointed him adjunct secretary of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the Vatican dicastery responsible for dealing with clerical abuse cases. In a November 23rd interview with Vatican media, Father Zollner said the meeting will be very important for the Church and that the committee will be in charge of both logistics and content according to the directions given by the Holy Father. Father Zollner said a questionnaire will be sent to participants beforehand so they can share experiences, difficulties, as well as possible solutions to deal with this terrible scandal. I've got some possible solutions. Throw the perpetrators in the Vatican dungeons. He said the meeting should be as free and fruitful as possible, and consultation will be wide. The Pontifical Commission will play a significant role in the preparation of the meeting, which will also reflect the Pope's emphasis on synodality and collegiality, Father Zollner said. Cardinal Cupich, friend of this channel, said November 20th he believed the meeting will be a watershed moment in the life of the Church. Oh, I'm betting it will be. And that time and again, the Pope has shown his resolve to comprehensively address this scourge. The Archbishop of Chicago, who, like the Holy Father, has frequently blamed the crisis primarily on clericalism, that amorphous, undefined thing, and said Francis is calling for radical reform in the life of the Church. For he understands that this crisis is about the abuse of power and a culture of protection and privilege, which created a climate of secrecy without accountability for misdeeds. I'll let you read the rest of that article on National Catholic Register. The link to that article is in the description below. Cupich. Again, do these people think we're stupid? Sadly, they may be right. If you attend Mass at a diocesan parish that celebrates the ordinary form or Novus Ordo or whatever you prefer to call it, ask your fellow parishioners about this scandal. You might be surprised that either few Catholics even know anything is going on, or that many just think it's a bunch of sedevacantists attacking the Pope. Either response being frankly uninformed. But that's the state of things. I've covered the antics and alleged crimes of our good friend Cardinal Cupich before, and in lurid detail. So let's take a look at the others. Cardinal Oswald Gracias, the Archbishop of Bombay and President of India's Bishops' Conference, was reported on in September by Crux as heading the investigation in India against a bishop who allegedly raped nuns. Yeah, you heard that right. Modernism has been wonderful for the Church, hasn't it? According to that Crux story, the alleged rapist is Bishop Franco Malaccal, who has been accused of raping a nun on 13 different occasions between 2014 and 2016. The nun went to the police in the southern state of Kerala on June 29th, and the civil authorities have since then been investigating the charges. This story made waves internationally. It's worth noting here that the Cardinal has no jurisdiction in this case and must defer to the actions of the Holy See, whatever those will be, when their investigation is done. We'll see how that plays out, but frankly, I'm not super confident, and I don't think I'm alone here. Most of the media is reporting that Archbishop Charles Scicluna has been cheerleading about how amazingly effective the February meeting will be that addresses clergy abuse. He's the adjunct secretary for the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, the Old Holy Office, aka the Old Inquisition. Archbishop Scicluna has been investigating the crimes in Chile by bishops and priests. That famously led to the resignation of the entire bishops' conference in Chile. Save for Scicluna, I guess, although he's actually the Archbishop of Malta. A CNA article describes him this way. Scicluna is the Vatican's top man on sexual abuse appeals cases. In addition to heading the Archdiocese of Malta, in 2015 he was named by the Pope to oversee the team in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, charged with handling appeals filed by the clergy accused of abuse. He served as the congregation's promoter of justice for 17 years, and is widely known for his expertise in the canonical norms governing allegations of sexual abuse. 17 years means he would have been around for round one of this problem. In general, he says all the right things to the approved Catholic media, saying things like, words and promises are not enough. But then again, those are themselves just words and promises, implied promises. However, he was also quoted by Catholic World Report as saying that the Synod for the Undermining of the Youth that we should not expect any movement on reform until February. So he says the right things in a superficial way, but is also a party man to the Vatican, and that's in no way surprising. Jesuit Father Hans Zollner is a weirdo, but he's a Jesuit, so that's a redundancy. He might be the most troubling figure aside from Cardinal Cupich. He has said to Crux and CNA that the coming February meeting on abuse will be an exercise in synodality. Soon before the McCarrick story blew up the church in America, Father Zollner said that the abuse crisis was about who we are as a church, whatever that means. He is cozy with Salt and Light Media, the Canadian equivalent of Pastor Jimmy Martin's America magazine. Father Zollner is often described as a child abuse expert, which may be the case. Of course, those accounts are all from establishment Catholic media outlets. Cardinal Cupich, you may recall, dismissed all of Archbishop Vigano's testimony, despite it later being corroborated by Cardinal Ouellet, as well as dismissing all claims that homosexuality is intrinsically linked to the abuse crisis, especially considering that the vast majority of former Cardinal McCarrick's victims were seminarians. Then there's Cardinal Scicluna, who endorsed the permissive and heterodox communion guidelines in Amoris Laetitia, which permitted the reception of Holy Communion by the divorced and civilly remarried. We should always be skeptical of the involvement of any prelate who not only holds but endorses heterodox ideas. Which brings us to Father Zollner, who, as an influential member of the Jesuit order, has permitted Father James Martin to continue to advocate for heinous and terrible ideas. We have no reason to believe that Father Zollner ever corrected Pastor Jimmy Martin in private, which is, of course, troubling given the nature of these allegations that he will be investigating himself. One thing that is telling in all this is this: the only one who has expressed any sentiments on the abuse of seminarians is Cardinal Cupich, as far as I was able to find, and he said that the relationships between adults are often consensual, should be treated differently than the abuse of children, which is both obvious but also shows how oblivious he is to the power dynamics involved in the affairs between superiors and inferiors, and how this is an obvious attack on both chastity and the timeless teachings of the Catholic Church as they relate to same-sex attraction and the acronym agenda promoted by Bay Area activists. That's a mouthful. And that's troubling because this meeting in February may continue to inch the Church towards the normalizations of the sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. Plus, it brings to light some new questions that have gone unanswered about Cardinal Cupich. Cupich was a relatively unknown prelate in the American hierarchy who was promoted out of the blue to the Archbishopric of Chicago at the recommendation of none other than Cardinal McCarrick. How anyone in Rome thinks that Cupich is appropriate for this office or this job is mind-boggling, unless he's there to protect the Lavender Mafia, which is probably the case. The McCarrick scandal will continue to be branded as a crisis involving the abuse of children, while the abuse of adult and teenage seminarians will probably be quietly swept under the rug in order to protect the Bay Area lobby and control the Vatican. And that would be a tragedy if this was anything new. If you like videos like this, like and share this video and subscribe, and click that notification bell below. You can support my work if you want to through Patreon. A link is in the description below, along with links to my Twitter, the blog, and the Facebook page I manage. For Return to Tradition, I'm Anthony Stein. Ave Maria.